So we are going to have a big picture conversation on, what the role of technology is in lifeguard operations and some of these guys' thoughts. So as I introduce you, just maybe give a little wave, and then each of them will have an opportunity to share a little bit more about their organizations. So we have Shane Daw, the General Manager of Coastal Safety from Surf Lifesaving Australia, tuning in, I'm assuming from Sydney. We have Adam Uehara, a Section Chief from the Los Angeles County Fire Department Lifeguard Division. We've got Matt Duplessis, who's the Lifeguard Manager for Waverly Council, that's with Bondi Beach. And then we have Andy Kent, there he is, who is the National Lifesaving Manager from Surf Lifesaving New Zealand. So we have a really incredible group of people, lifeguard leaders from all over the planet here to chat about this. I've got some prepared questions that I want to kind of facilitate the discussion, but before we do that, I'm going to ask that each of them take a very quick minute and 30 seconds, 2 minutes, to talk about their organization and how you guys are using technology, and just to kind of introduce where you're coming from. So Matt, would you like to go first?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. First of all, we comprise of Bondi Beach, Tamarama, and Bronte Beach. It's some of the Australia's actually busiest beaches. As you know, Bondi, we've got the Bondi Rescue Show going on. We have about over 1,500 rescues a year down at Bondi specifically. Now, I work that out to be about 90 to 100 rescues a lifeguard every year that actually works down there. So it's actually quite a lot. We've got about 2,500 first aids, and we have millions of visitations every year. Basically, Bondi or Waverly Council has about 60% of the state's rescue average just down at these three beaches, which is super high. Our council provides professional lifeguard services 365 days a year. And our mission is to provide the highest quality services in the coastal aquatic environment for the public through rescue, education, medical response, and beach management. Technology, such a busy beach, we do rely on a lot of technology, such as iPads. We use digital radios, iAuditor for electronic logs and checklists, reporting, Vault systems for our WHS reporting, GPS trackers. We recently placed on all our jet skis, our side-by-side vehicles, and some of our rescue boards. Our lifeguards even use personal Garmin watches for their fitness training and competitions between each other. We've got CCTV camera systems, PAs, and since COVID, we've introduced things such as Wi-Fi sniffing, camera AI, people counts, even people with clickers on the beaches, just walking up and down, counting the numbers of beach users. And and VMS boards, variable message signs. So yeah, there's a whole suite of things we're using, and we really do embrace the technology, and hope we get a lot out of this talk today.
Great, thank you, Matt. Chief Uehara from LA County, would you like to take a quick minute and 30 seconds to describe where you're coming from and the organization you work for?
Sure. I work for Los Angeles County Fire Department Lifeguard Division. I've been with the department for about 14 years. We guard about 72 miles of coastline. We have 161 full-time employees and about 700 seasonal employees. Our activity range is about 50 million visitors, about 10,000 rescues a year, 15,000 medicals, 400 boat rescues, 1,000 missing people, and we have about 65 units on the beach, 8 to 9 rescue boats, 8 rescue watercrafts, and about 10 side-by-sides. We have a variety of special teams that we have. We have the dive team, the swiftwater, robotics, and our incident management team that goes out to large-scale incidents that manage large incidents on the beach, like oil spills, missing swimmers. And we've also expanded to do wildland fires, mud and debris flows, and we've also sent members to Puerto Rico to assist with Hurricane Maria. Some of the technologies that we've implemented were some of our databases that we use for our swim exams, and we've branched out and helped out with the fireside for their exams as well. About 40,000 participants come out to that. We've also used the databases to help with our incident management tracking. We recently used that to manage the PPEs for distribution in the Los Angeles County region during the COVID incident down here. And we have a bunch of lifeguards working that as well with testing sites, housing the homeless, and vaccination distribution. So we definitely embrace the technology. We use technological equipment with underwater submarines, Emily devices, and all sorts of fun things. So we love the technology, or at least some of us, and I continue like to push the living edge on those things and make us the most advanced lifeguard service as we possibly can.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief Uehara. Andy, would you like to take a quick 90 seconds, keep it short, describe your organization and where you're coming from? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Will. G'day, everyone. As Will said, I'm the Lifesaving Manager. I've recently returned into this role from a 10-year break where I was in Australia for a bit. So a lot of familiar names. But yeah, Surf Lifesaving New Zealand, very similar to Surf Lifesaving Australia, but just on a smaller scale. 74 clubs, about 90 patrolled areas, spread right across the country, 4,500 lifeguards. Both volunteer and paid. We're the only service provider in New Zealand, so a little bit different from the makeup of what everyone sort of is pretty familiar in Australia. So yeah, our major issues and stuff around technology is trying to bring everyone together, and similar to Australia, trying to get different councils, different local authorities to bring all their ideas together. Some areas of the country very populated, other areas of the country, very rural, but during the holiday periods explode in terms of population. So there's not the money from those councils to really invest in technology to cope with that. So that's those sort of our challenges at the moment. I'll talk about it a bit more around the panel discussion around what we're sort of looking at. Thanks, Will.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. Welcome. And Shane, would you like to, 90 seconds, take a quick overview of what your role is in the organization you work for?
No worries. Thanks, Will, and thanks everyone for having us. Yeah, not in Sydney today, mate. Up on up in Currumbin at the moment on the Gold Coast, which isn't very sunny today, so a bit of weather coming in. But with regards to so Surf Lifesaving Australia, so we're a national organisation, as Andy implied, similar to New Zealand in that frame. We've got 314 surf lifesaving clubs around the country, 176,000 members, 46,000 of them approximately, which patrol the beach on a regular basis. A reasonably large employer of lifeguards with about 1,000 lifeguards around the country, around about 1,100, 1,200 inflatable rescue boats and jet rescue boats, helicopters, etc. So quite a big organisation in that sense. We've got 52,000 kilometres of coastline, which we have, which is quite diverse, from very remote to very built up, as Matt knows, with Bondi being a popular location, and around about 12,000 beaches in that framework. So for us, technology is essential to ensure that we're viable and relevant to what's going on around the place, and also to be more efficient in what we're doing. So there was a number of things that were mentioned with previous presenters by Rob and Tony. So we've been doing work with Ocean Alive, the Neptune Ocean people, Luxy, looking at wearable devices for alerts to provide information to surf lifesavers and lifeguards, risk rating systems, risk tools, to not just from a lifeguarding perspective, but also from an end user, from a public consumer point of view. How do we actually get them to actually understand the risks and be able to work out what these are? And we've done some fantastic work in the past with Samsung. We're doing a program, what we call Pocket Patrol, about having virtual live data provided to a person. They do a QR code, come through, and they can see what those risks are at those locations. We do a lot of work with the Bureau of Meteorology, as mentioned before with Tony, just about trying to understand some of the weather impacts and how we can forecast things moving forward. Where patrol ops at, we do camera counts, RIP drones, etc. So there's plenty of stuff going on, which will no doubt come out through the day.
Excellent. Thanks, Shane. Okay, so for the four of you, the way that this is going to work best is if you want to talk, just raise your hand and then I'll kind of work through each of you. If you see me raise my hand, that means that it's time for you to wrap up what you're saying. We've got kind of 4 domains that we want to cover in just under 30 minutes to do all of that. So try and keep your answers as concise as possible. Yeah, we'll move forward. So the first kind of area that I want to talk about, or I want to get your perspective on, is the fact that there's a fear in many sectors that advances in technology will replace the people who are currently working those jobs. Do you share this concern for those working in lifeguarding and coastal safety? Will technology end up replacing lifeguards? Why or why not? I'm interested in some of your perspectives on that. So does anybody want to take the first crack at that, or am I going to call on someone? All right, Adam, go ahead. Thanks.
So in LA County in about 2003, we implemented our camera system similar to Surfline. And originally the lifeguards were a little apprehensive to that implementation because they're like, well, if you're going to lifeguard from camera, you don't need us. But as Tony and Rob talked about, it kind of validates what we're doing out there. And it also, shows the need. And if anything, it makes the staff earlier and more frequent. And we also implemented the Emily device, which is like, I don't know if anyone's familiar, emergency integrated life-saving lanyard, basically a RC boat on steroids, like a little floating rescue can that go out. And they're like, well, how's that going to save people? And we demoed it. And to operate that device, that RC boat, obviously you still need the lifeguards to spot the rescue, but it just doesn't really have the strength to really pull someone in any sizable surf. But we used it for sonar, for missing swimmers in the water and whatnot. And it actually takes more lifeguards than less lifeguards to manage that. So I think it's been a great resource. And, everyone in, at least in my department, everyone, they want change, but no one wants to actually do the change, so it's kind of so I think the way you implement it is just by implementing, a pilot project, and you start off small and you demonstrate the capabilities and internal politics just to eliminate the fear a little bit. And you also need the public buy-off as well. That perception, public perception obviously is everything. So if they don't support your programs and what you're doing out there, then, it's not going to work.
Yeah, Shane, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, thanks. I think, as Adam's saying, technology is certainly not going to replace people. I recall I lived through technology coming in, and Rob certainly did as well with the paperless society, and how's that worked out for us. I think we've got more paper than ever before, and actually more work out of it. So I think probably the critical factor of what we're finding is with technology is it's opening up our insights and our awareness to just how deep some of these issues are and how far reaching they are. Whereas beforehand, we were probably a little bit ignorant or unaware of some of the diversity and the complexity of the situations and where they were occurring. With the technology, we're knowing that there's more and more locations that are being visited. We're actually finding out that a lot of incidents we didn't know about in the past, we're hearing about more often. So, everyone's got a smart device of some sort, so they're reporting things as they're happening. So if anything, if I'm looking at the risk gaps, if I'm looking at drones, if I'm looking at the development of the helicopter rescue services, etc., everything has actually increased our need to be out there. And with the growing community looking for a coastal sea change and visiting it and finding more and more areas, the technology is enhancing what we're doing. It's making us more responsive and reactive. And I think the fear factor needs to be pushed to the side to say, okay, how is this enabling me to do my job better? It's not going to take anything away. It's actually going to make me more efficient. And therefore, we may be able to do more at more locations, because the fact is, draining deaths are still occurring, and we're getting such a significant number of them around the world that's not going to go away, and technology needs to be embraced and owned.
Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just thanks, Shane. I also actually agree on quite a lot of that stuff, especially with technology as supporting the services and providing the input why we actually need lifeguards. I think one thing that we do need to consider is we still need to focus on the 101s of lifeguarding, is because technology eventually will fail. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, where the drone will fall out the sky, where the camera will go down, the radio network goes down. We've seen a whole bunch of things. And what we've still got to remember is the key lifeguard skills on their fitness, their training and all that, when the jet ski doesn't work, well, they've still got to get the pair of fins on and swim and continue that rescue and bring a person back to the beach. So I think as we just got to make sure that when we use technology, it's a supplementary service to add benefit to all the operations and provide us some extra evidence base to actually go forward. So I think some people focus on technology too much into the operations, where they actually sometimes forget about the basics of the actual lifeguard themselves and how they do their jobs. So, but we are embracing the technology and looking at ways to help our service grow there.
Andy, last quick comment before we move on.
It's just a balance, right? I agree with Matt. It's a complete balance. Is that technology will help lifeguards rather than trying to be a jack of all trades and trying to do everything. As technology sort of comes in, we can sort of push like beach counting. You know, not some lifeguards and the variance around it is if we can remove that from a lifeguarding activity where we don't have to do it because technology is doing it for us. Lifeguards, as Matt said, focus on the 101 of of keeping people safe on the beach without these sort of extra add-ons of sort of what organisations like Surf Lifesaving New Zealand has sort of put on lifeguards forever, because we think it's a good idea to start counting numbers. But if we can remove that and they can focus back on 101, I think it's a really good use of it without trying to create these lifeguards who have to be so far stretched to do everything.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to kind of plow forward here. So in 2017, Dr. Joost Beerens from the Netherlands wrote an editorial in response to a peer-reviewed scientific study on the use of drones by Swedish lifeguards in search and rescue. So in this editorial, Dr. Beerens commented that, quote, "An exponential number of technological gadgets to assist drowning reduction have become available. Sponsors, managers, decision makers, and field workers can easily be seduced by these toys for boys without the proper understanding and evaluating of their needs, potentials, and failures." So the question to you all, in your mind, what are the driving objectives that should guide a lifeguard services decision to explore or adopt a new technology? And specifically, how do we ensure that these new tools are actually useful and not just fun new toys? Andy, why don't you kick us off? Thanks.
Yeah, I think this is if you work in lifesaving and any sort of administration role, I bet you everyone can relate to this. In an organisation like ours, we've got thousands of people who with their best intentions want to try and improve what we're doing, and even sponsors, they try and attach to a strong brand like Surf Lifesaving, and they want to be associated with the best intentions. But I think the one thing which we always need to drive back to is what is the problem we're trying to solve? And whenever someone approaches us with anything like this, it needs to be keeps being asked and answered. What problem are we trying to solve? Because I think the three things which come to my mind is someone's tried to reinvent the rescue tube for I don't know countless times in my sort of lifetime as being a lifeguard, when actually what problem are we trying to solve with reinventing a rescue tube? It might not be fit for purpose for a certain numbers of things, but what it is fit for purpose for, I think it does a really good job. So why are we trying to, but someone has a great idea because they think a blow up rescue tube might be better, but again, what problem are we trying to solve with it? I think Matt and Shane and my time in Australia remember this when UAVs first sort of came into it probably 7 or 8 years ago, and we all met in Queensland, and we were all sort of going, this is all great technology, but what are we trying to solve with this? And being sold a story of dropping things from the sky and all these wonderful things, which actually yeah, again, what we were talking about before is that we need all these people to try and fly these things first. What problem are we trying to solve? Where we're going to use this great piece of technology, and I think that's where I think the beach visitation cameras and all the people counting stuff, that's the type of thing which, from a Surf Lifesaving New Zealand point of view, what problem are we trying to solve? For us, really clear objective is that we want to get more accurate data to then try and help us understand who's using our beach. To me, those are three different things around which I think, sort of from my point of view, are really quickly answered to say, well, the beach visitation data is exactly what problem we're trying to solve. We've got crap data. We want better data.
All right, thanks, Sandy. Someone else want to jump in here? Boys for toys for boys, Adam.
Got me? Yeah, I think it's just, like Andy said, we just have to have our objectives and make sure it aligns with the mission of the organization. Every time we have a training academy through, I want to make sure that any action or anything that they do out there is related to the mission of protecting life, property, and the environment. And just having things just to have things, yeah, I agree. We're going to spend money needlessly. And, even when we started implementing, playing with YouTube and social media for public information, people originally thought we're just trying to compete with cat videos, but it's like, no, we got to come up with the times and get that information out there, because we're competing with people on cell phones, and that being in the newspaper the next day isn't quick enough. People want that information now. So to utilize those technologies, especially when they're cost effective, like social media, free in certain cases, and if it's properly policed and used correctly, it could be a very powerful asset to an organization to increase public awareness, ultimately for their safety, and to help disseminate that information in an appropriate manner.
Maybe you go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think was a pause there. Okay, yeah, I think from our side too, I was thinking as recently been going through some risk assessments, and if you're trying to lower the risk of a problem on the beach, and you've done all you can do, and there's not much more you can do to actually lower that risk, the likelihood and the consequence in that, I'll throw more toys into the system just because you're doing that just to try and tick a box, and more like the publics are than anything else, or politically, it's not always the best avenue to go down. So I think if you are really struggling, it's just do basic risk assessments about what have you done to, what control measures have you put in place for this, and do we actually need any further equipment, or does it need to be modified to actually control this risk? And if it doesn't, well, maybe you don't need to look in that area and actually focus on the bigger picture, and then continuously try and look after the vendors approaching you with all sorts of solutions to the world to solve all the problems, which you don't often have.
Thanks. My apologies. I think I'm having some tech slowdown. So if that happens again, yeah, just continue on without me. But Shane, do you want to wrap up the question?
I mean, the other three have covered it, I think, adequately for the major part of it. I think probably the key thing for me comes back to, what is the problem? Have we actually got an identified problem? What is the purpose of it? Because often we're very good, and I have a view. If we've got sometimes some very simple processes which are very effective, but let's give it to a group of people, and they can complicate the hell out of it. So sometimes we just need to take a back step on that, and just think about what is our problem, what are we trying to do. As Andy mentioned beforehand, when we put in drones, we had a sexy solution, we just didn't know what problem we were applying it to. So we just need to come back to some of those basics so that we don't complicate things, we don't distract our lifeguards and lifesavers from their primary duties, and come back to the reality. Is it improving, enhancing what they're doing, or improving or enhancing and value adding to saving lives? If it's not, if it's complicating things, then let's not get distracted.
Yeah, those are all great points, and I think keeping those things forefront in your mind as new things come up and new people come up with solutions is important. And that's where kind of we want to go next, is this idea of innovation and innovation culture. So in lifeguarding, many of the very early advances came from the field level lifeguards who were attempting to fill gaps, right? They were trying to figure out a way to do their job better or their job safer. The development of a portable line and reel, or the use of surfboards as a rescue device, and even the transition from, human-powered surf boats to putting a motor on the back of the boat for surf zone rescues. All those changes were driven from lifeguards in the field. And this topic of innovation, brings several questions to mind. And so I'm going to pose kind of two areas that I'd like you guys to comment on. The first is internal innovation. So are advances still coming from within the lifeguard ranks? And then the second one that I want you to kind of think about is looking beyond the lifeguard sector. How has or should the profession engage with other industries to explore ways to advance and improve? Matt, you want to take a crack at this one?
Yeah, I think with these internal innovation, that's still happening nowadays. If any of you actually go up and watch some of the Bondi rescue shows, the rescue boards we actually use there have been developed by our lifeguards. They've actually got they've got a lot more chunkier, a lot more width, a lot more buoyancy to actually do mass rescues, and also rescue a bit of the larger clientele we're getting down the beach. So the lifeguards actually got together and actually brought on that plan for one of the new boards that we're using now. So also the jet ski sleds. So we've been using sleds for years. And once again, the lifeguards got together in the group and they've actually helped design the sled that we're actually using down at Bondi Beach. A lot of the sleds are all the same, but there's a few tweaks, a few add-ons, and it's just more of a bespoke kind of system we wanted to use. So I think on that side of things, it's more the equipment side we see the lifeguards with the innovation. As with the technology, actually the tech stuff itself, as we don't see too much movement. But then, hey, the guys have been using social media. That's something they embraced. If you'll see, there's a whole bunch of stuff the guys are pushing out there. And if we have a message we need to push out with surf safety, big waves, or anything like that, we push it out to the lifeguards, and through their own platforms, they push it out to all their followers. So there's a lot of internal stuff they've been using, which indirectly also helps us.
Excellent, thanks. Andy, Shane, Adam, any comments on kind of innovation culture in your organizations? Yeah,
sure.
Go ahead.
A lot of the technologies kind of come out of necessity that we develop here in the county. Let's say, for example, we implemented a CPR machine, and that developed because we only have, on our rescue boats, we only staff 2 personnel. So if they're transporting a patient from vessel to vessel or from vessel to beach, someone else has to man the vessel, and the other could be doing CPR themselves. And we have a paramedic lifeguard, so the paramedic might be pushing drugs and whatnot, and the other's driving to get help or get them to shore, just using those technologies just to make the job more efficient and better. And us being a little smaller organization in the fire department, we're able to still be very innovative on what we do, and we've always chosen to be the pilot project, and it's easy for us to get a lot of buy-off with a smaller group of people like-minded that really are safety focused. So it's great to be a part of an organization with a lot of bright minds that want to make things better and really want to help people.
Excellent. Just to clarify for Adam Wooler, when the LA County lifeguards are pushing drugs, that means that they're administering medicine, not giving out illegal substances.
We got to raise money the way we can.
Shane or Shane or Andy, any other comments on innovation culture?
Yeah, thanks.
Andy, go ahead.
I'll let Shane go. You're right.
All right. Thanks, Andy. Innovation, I think it's changed a lot in recent years. So a lot of the innovation was coming from internally, and that still happens. It's, as Matt implied, it's getting a little bit more complex in some ways, but it's those little things which are making the difference, but also those thought bubbles and ideas that come forward and then can, be built into something else. But, the reality is that, we've had to be a lot more adaptable. We have had to be a lot more responsive in some cases. So, working with different groups, like, whether it's a Bureau of Meteorology or others, is offering us new insights, which are allowing us to develop risk gaps and tools. So the diversity of it is, I think it's coming from multi directions, and we're probably a lot more open to it. And also working with other organisations, at different stages. Organisations go very internal, but Matt and I discuss things on many occasions. Usually it involves me buying lunch because Matt doesn't buy lunch, but and there's a whole pile of other developments going on. But it's, I think, when you see the World Conference on Drowning Prevention and the sharing of data and information, there's innovation which is coming from all directions, whether it's from a member base, a lifeguard base, or from research institutions like through Rob's team, through government agencies like the BOM and others. I think there's a diversity there, and there's been good embracing of it, which is enhancing and benefiting us all.
Yeah, I agree with Shane around, and I think one of the biggest things for us at the moment is development of apps for recording and reporting incidences. It's all well and good to sit in a comm center or an admin sort of position and work with an app developer to think what we need as an end result. But from a lifeguard user point of view, that innovation and what is actually applicable to the lifeguard on the beach is it's incredibly important. So, and really sort of pushing them to really unleash on a national manager like myself to say, what do you need? If we push this to you, is this the right way to do it? The other thing I want to say around innovation from the lifeguards ranks is New Zealand's population is growing all the time, like I suppose like everyone's, but it means we're finding different beaches and we're having to move to different beaches, which may be different. There's a lot of coastal erosion happening on Auckland's west coast. So, and it's a sort of over different types of years, the beaches change. So how do local lifeguards and local clubs use innovation to start? They might have to patrol their beach differently from what they have done in the last 5 or 6 years. So what type of technology do they need to cope with that change?
Thanks, Andy. It looks like we might have lost Will for a moment. So the second half of that question was about looking around at other industries. And I noticed one of the comments in the chat there about nurses spending a whole bunch of time entering data, which greatly reduces their time to spend with patients. So I think that really is very closely aligned to what we talked about before of Lifeguard 101. Are there any other examples of looking out to parallel industries for inspiration? Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so I think one of the big ones, I think a lot of us, I think all around this group can actually understand is especially the apps and technology and recording and reporting of our again paperless system. I think that's caused a lot of headaches over the years, all the different systems we've been using. I think what we're doing now, we're actually not looking at having our own product, or we're actually looking at off-the-shelf product that other industries use, such as the mining groups or the other major Department of Transport, and the ones actually that we're looking at companies that really have a product that we can just tweak. I think when we look at industry for technology, often we're not the biggest movers with the technology side of things. There's a lot bigger industries out there, such as the Apples and all these other brands you can think of. And there's so much more work they do. And for us to start focusing on having our own bespoke systems in regards to, for example, recording our daily logs is something which we're probably not going to be going down that path. We're actually going to be looking at what's out there in the market already, because there's no point reinventing it if there's something really good that works out there.
Yeah, the New Zealand, I agree with Matt, the New Zealand Ambulance Service, St. John, is basically the main provider here. And in our northern region, Surfcom at the moment, they have a system of MDT. So basically it's in its infancy. It's only been going for about sort of 2 years, 2 seasons, and it's really starting to take off around how if the ambulance service needs us, it's controlled from a it's the same tablet which all ambulances have in their ambulances, which is pushed from the Ecom Centre, and now we have one. So any medical sort of jobs which are associated with the beach, we also get notified. All those beaches do as well. So it's using that sort of stuff and learning off them and around how that works and how they all communicate so smoothly. When yet we're still sort of struggling with WhatsApp or a radio network, which sort of it works, but we need to be smarter, and learning off them has really been a really big benefit for us.
Excellent, thanks, Andy. Just conscious of time now, so we'll just move on to the last question. The last one we had was, what technology are you most excited about? So there's a whole bunch of stuff we've talked about here. There's challenges and different bits and pieces coming in, but I just wanted to quickly go around the table and just look at what are you most excited about. So Adam, what gets you up in the morning?
Coffee, but for technology-wise, for lifeguards, I'm really excited about some of the things that you and Rob talked about with the artificial intelligence and getting all that data set into AI system that can actually help us on our staffing with the predictive modeling. With 72 miles of coastline, every beach is a little bit different, and with the COVID going around, we saw some trends that were not foreseen, where they shut down the parking lots because they're trying to restrict access to the beach to prevent the spread of COVID. And what we saw was it actually spread activity to beaches that normally didn't have activity. So those beaches were very impacted, and the tower density for the lifeguards are normally set up around parking lots because you have a higher density of visitors coming to that beach. And we saw a slight uptick in their slower beaches with Uber and Lyft, where there isn't that much parking and residential spaces and people coming out. But the COVID really pushed forward, seeing these pocket beaches getting populated, and we had a lot of near misses, and we actually had a drowning on an area that's we still had a lifeguard staff, but it was 10 times busier than it's ever been, just due to the pandemic and the closing of parking lots and shifting. So maybe the AI model could help with the case of keeping those parking lots open, so when we properly staff it, we have the proper lifeguard to visitor ratio and whatnot. But I think that should be very helpful, and it obviously will help validate what we're doing on the beach as well. So I think that artificial intelligence stuff that you're doing, stuff that Google, Palantir, Snowflake, and those technology companies, those big data companies, bringing it all in with weather, activities, school schedules, Uber cycles, bus schedules, would really help us in staffing our beaches accordingly.
Excellent. Matt, what are you most excited about?
I think it's just going to more the electronic log systems and having the AI go actually pick up all the beach users, do the number counts, grabbing all the weather data, the surf reports, all that into our systems. I think the sooner we can free up our lifeguards from doing all the paperwork, the logs, and having issues with some of these systems we're using, it's the better, and then we can focus on bigger things. But I think it's just lessen the paperwork and burden on the lifeguard, gives you more eyes in the water. So the easier the systems are that we can do, I think it's better for the service.
Thanks, Matt. Shane?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Very similar to Matt and Adam with regards to that. It's probably the internal facing one, which is that data management system, where it's the smart tools which are going to inform our members, our lifeguards, lifesavers, about what's happening, and how to be prepared for it, and that data recording to give live feed information of incidents that are happening, whether it's through the cameras, through the recording of that data, the weather, so that they know of those instances instantly, rather than having to wait for 3 to 6 months for that to be investigated. And then I think the second part is Adam was saying that that whole artificial intelligence is how we actually, and we've done a little bit of work with it before, as I was saying with Pocket Patrol, is how do we actually visualize that from a community perspective, so that members of the community, if they're going to a location, whether they get on it beforehand or at the location, they can visualize and see what lifeguards are seeing and see the hazards through a very simple tool where they can run their phone around the area and it'll show, you know, there's rips, there's hazards there, or where the patrolled location is, which will give them information to make informed decisions about where they're recreating and therefore hopefully change their behavior. That's the sort of thing that I get excited about, that it's about that change in your behavior. Because from a lifeguarding point of view, it's about the safety part and having that data, but from a community perspective, it's about how do we get them to be better educated, and that's through understanding, getting them to actually take ownership of the issues.
Yeah, integrated reality is definitely exciting. And Andy, we'll just finish up with you quickly.
Yeah, those last two things that Shane said around, the getting better data to inform ourselves, so therefore we can inform the public better. I think that's the thing which is really going to kick off here in New Zealand in the next wee while, is utilising data, utilising technology to get better data, so therefore we can educate people better and ourselves, because I've said it before, the people counting stuff to actually get hard quality data rather than relying on sort of lifeguard head counts is I think really going to go a long way for us.
Thanks.
Excellent.
So we got Will back.
Yeah, sorry everyone, had some computer issues, but we're here on the backup one. So thank you all for contributing to this panel. I think this has been a really interesting and productive discussion. Thanks to Adam, Shane, Matt, and Andy for all your comments.